Good morning. That was very timid. Good morning. Fantastic. I know it's slightly early, not too bad, but a little bit.
Not at all. Hello, everybody. I think it's perfect time for a little bit singing.
Ah, come on. If I'm gonna sing, it's gonna be like na 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 na.
That's a good start.
It's a good theme, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully you all know it by this fine young man to my left here. I'm Austin. I'm mainly just gonna sit here and reminisce with a great old friend and hope that it's interesting to bear witness to, because this is a remarkable guy, and this would have been a really wonderful chat to have under any circumstances, but now we get to do it on the wake of the explosion that was his work this year in particular. I imagine if you're here at 10:30 in the morning, it's because you're keenly aware of the endless black hole of glory that is Baldur's Gate 3. But we will come to that in due time. And also, I'm going to do my best to keep an eye on the clock so that you all will have a chance to ask questions and weigh in, give us your real-time feedback on this conversation. To begin, I guess, first off, how are you feeling riding high the last few months? We'll get into more specifics obviously later, but just let us live vicariously through the last few months that you've been enjoying.
So first of all, I'd like to say hello, everyone, and thank you for being here. It's a pleasure for me. Um, the thing that I've been working in Ghent for almost 8 years, and this is the very first time I'm here. It's a curious and a little bit funny thing, but here I am. I've been following the festival for many years, and I'd like to say thank you to the hosts and to the film festival team for inviting me and for being here. And last but definitely not least, for giving me the chance to reunite with my old-term friend Austin. And it's always a pleasure to meet with him. And before we start, I'd like to let you know something to give you a friendly warning. We love listening to our voice. So if at some point we are talking too much and you would like to ask or say anything, please don't hesitate to to stop us and to let us know. And yeah, so it was quite a ride. As I was saying, this is actually like I've been spending already quite some time in my beloved city of Ghent. As I said, this is like my second home to me because our headquarters, Larian headquarters, is based in Ghent, within a walking distance from here, as a matter of fact. And I love walking down by the channels, and that might be a curious thing for you to let you know that the main theme of the game was actually conceived this way. I was having one of my favorite walks a couple of years ago down by one of the channels when I came up with the idea that that would be a fantastic theme. And from that moment on, I have a vivid memory running towards the office before I forget this idea. But luckily enough,
We need to buy you a phone where you can actually record yourself. This technology has finally caught up with your mind.
yeah. You're actually right. My phone actually is full of stupid ideas.
Yeah, yeah.
But at that time, I was really in a hurry because nothing compares to the live performance. So when you have an idea, it's not just the idea; it's also the emotion. And I believe that you know what I'm talking about. When you have an emotion, you feel it, and you know that now, if you sit behind your piano or if you grab your guitar, it would be the perfect time to start composing the next thing.
Yeah, well, that bespeaks the musicality in your work that I so love. Some people think from a very production standpoint, it's about sculpting sound, and that can be quite brilliant. But I've always felt there's a more of a kind of old soul quality to what you do. That it comes through an instrument, it comes through a voice in a very kind of organic, very human way, which is a increasingly that's kind of an old-fashioned notion, and that's not better or worse. There are some pieces out there that are all production. You couldn't really recreate it at the piano, and they can be brilliant. But I come from a slightly old school background, so I've always liked that about your work. So it's not surprising to me that it's not enough to just sing it into the app on the phone. You want to have an instrument. It comes as no surprise. But let's go back in time a little bit, and just to give a sense and to kind of lay the table about what your path has been like. Because I think when we first met, it was well before the things that I think most people would know you for today, I would imagine the thing that has cast the longest shadow the last decade and change is Divinity, Original Sin 2, and of course Baldur's Gate 3. But you had already been at this for a good amount of time before doing those. Those were not your first. I imagine you wouldn't have felt up to the task to those scores if they had come to you earlier in life. So what was that earlier in life? Just give us the kind of run from when you first picked up an instrument to how you made your way in and got rolling.
This is another, I would say, maybe surprising story. I don't know, maybe some of you guys are familiar with this. I told this story quite a few times already, but actually, I started my adventure in the video game industry as a video game composer in 2001, my friend. So I'm a little bit afraid
Proper
to share.
veteran.
Yeah. So back then, the funny thing that I wanted to share with you is that I always wanted to compose and to produce music, but back then it was really difficult when I was a kid, and I studied in the university, and I'm, as a matter of fact, master of computer science by education. But one beautiful morning, I realized that I cannot keep fooling myself, and the time had come for me to decide to start following my heart. And this is the first thing that I would like to tell you and to share with you, that the most important thing, the way I see it, is that we need to follow our hearts. This is the only thing that truly belongs to us, and I'm very happy that I took this decision many years ago, because I made a complete change in my career and my personal life the moment I decided I will no longer develop myself as a IT specialist back then. But
I
I
was
will
going to
become.
ask if that work was at least in the game industry, but
No, it was completely different. It was still, of course, in a big software company, but it was a completely different thing. And the moment I decided, I really need to stop fooling myself. So I really need to start following. Life is too short. Sounds like cliche, but so much true from my perspective, and especially now when I look back so many years ago. And it was a hard time, I can tell you. 20 years ago, it was a completely different story to make a career in the video game industry. But when you are true to yourself, and you're consistent, and you keep doing what you love, eventually, with a pinch of luck, and I will allow myself to quote my dear friend Austin here. Many years
uh-oh.
ago, he said something like, "You need to be on the right place, always hoping that you'd be there on the right time."
Mhm.
So something like this happened with me as well. So I was constantly striving to be on the right place until the moment come that I found that the right time has come, and I managed to make my entrance to the
Well,
big scene.
I'm a firm believer that of that idea that we all need luck to be able to get going and to be able to stay in it. You need a continuous source of luck, which would seemingly mean we have no actual agency or power in our career's path. And truth be told, we don't have as much as we might want. You can't make a game be a hit that everyone's talking about and then helps your career move forward. We've all had those experiences of working on things that we put all our soul into and then just no one played it and no one paid attention. And so you just think, well, you know, I guess try again. What else am I supposed to do? And so luck is always involved. But I to you that sort of quote, everyone always says luck is being at the right place at the right time. But I've always said that you can't control the right time, but you can, to a degree, control the right place. And the right time, actually, it's like a train that will just periodically come back to the station. And as long as you're there before the next one pulls up, you have that chance. So, of course, it sounds all well and good, but it's sort of, well, where is that actual place? Like I'm in Google Map and I'm looking, is it there? Is it? Give me some GPS coordinates. And it's obviously not so easy. It's more of a frame of mind than anything. But you are definitely one of those people with that frame of mind. I can't really imagine. I can't really imagine what your personality was like in this prior era where you were somehow feeling like you weren't following your dream, because you're somebody that has always diffused this "how lucky are we" kind of energy. It's very contagious to be around.
Yeah, could agree more, my friend. And I can tell you another story that quickly comes to mind, and it's again connected with my beloved city of Ghent. Yes, you cannot actually control your luck, but I firmly believe that you can actually provoke your luck if you like. And here is a story that I want to share with all of you guys here. Approximately 8 years ago was the time that I decided that the time had come at that time to make another change in my career. So I really needed to make a change, and that was the time I got in touch with my director, the founder and the director of Larian Studios, Sven Vinke. And I have a really pleasant memories getting in touch with him, being pleasantly surprised the way he reacted. He instantly invited me. I decided to come here to visit this beautiful city for the first time, to spend some time with the city, to share my passion with the guys, and to find out that we clicked perfectly well and that a brand new page in my history started. So I would
What
assume that.
prompted you to do that? What prompted you to reach out like that?
Well, I was a huge fan of Larian Studios many years before I joined the company.
Mm.
I actually played every single game of the studio before I joined the company. Back then, our legendary composer of Larian Studios had passed away sadly, and the very reason I never actually applied to become part of the Larian Studios team was the fact that I was huge fan of his music,
Mm.
and I never felt that I could add any additional value to this team, and I was just enjoying the games and everything that they were producing and they were releasing so much. But when I heard about the said news, it took me like maybe more than half a year to realize that no matter how sad the news were back then, maybe I should get in touch with the guys I love so much. Maybe I should say hi, and that was my way to provoke my luck,
Mm.
if you like. This is how I got the invitation by Sven himself to come visit this lovely city, to talk to the team, and to find out eventually that we were feeling so well with one another.
I mean that I love that story because I'm often talking to younger composers who are first starting, and it's a common thread where someone will say, "Oh, I really love X game company or Y composer," and I'll say, "Have you ever reached out to them to say something?" And they, "Oh no, they'll never respond or they'll never." And I say, I could give you 50 stories that prove like this that you'd be amazed how often you just send someone an email and they'll, especially if it's something genuine and personal, like
Yeah,
if you're, it's not just I'm applying for a job, it's
that's
I
the key word,
admire
my
you.
friend.
Yeah.
Genuine. That's it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I it's a totally different thing to shotgun out emails. I was joking with some friends the other day about how there's a group of composers who all kind of we keep in touch with each other, and a lot of us sort of are friends or at least acquainted on a semi-regular basis. And anytime there's a young composer that has sends out 50 emails to all of us at once, we tend to be aware of it, because we'll all say, "Hey, did you get this one from this person?" And whereas if someone sends an email that's very personal and very specific, and it's like I don't take that for granted personally. When it comes to me, at least, it's always very striking, and I want to make sure that person knows that it meant a lot. And if there's something I can do to help them, I'm happy to do that. And I can't imagine you're not the same. Where it's different. My favorite was once I got an email praising me so much for my music on games like Fallout, and it even said at the beginning, "Dear Enon." And I thought, I suspect this one's not for me, but I appreciate the candor. I can forward it to him if you'd like. I also admire his work, but yeah. So that's I love that story. I love that you just were a fan, and obviously that's a difficult situation to navigate because you would never want to come across like so-called ambulance chaser or something, like you were seizing an opportunity, but more just coming from a very genuine place. Of course, anyone has to only know you for 5 minutes to know that you're completely incapable of this sort of predatory vulture behavior. That you're much more of a just open-hearted, big, warm, fuzzy human being. So actually, one thing I just go backing again. It's interesting to me when you say listening to your heart, and specifically regarding games. There's such a huge contingent of composers in the game industry that were broadly interested in media, or even explicitly really wanted to do movies but then kind of found their way into games one way or the other. And the way, particularly the Larian collaborations, you're so interwoven into the game. You really strike me. I don't like the labels of so and so is a game composer or a film because I don't like the idea of restricting as if you
I know you
couldn't.
don't like it, my friend, but
Yeah,
the thing is that first of all, I really like the question and direction you're
run
going
with it.
because this is some of the things that I feel very strongly. And you're absolutely right. I consider myself a video game professional. Okay, I won't put it the way video game composer, but let's say I consider myself video game professional. And from the very start, when I was starting my career, um, I knew that I wanted to combine two passions in my life: video games and music.
Mm.
And the decision felt, very naturally in place. That the best way to combine those two biggest passions in my life was to start develop myself as a game composer and music director, which is strongly connected with my role as a composer. Because being composer is one thing, and being composer is actually a little bit different. And I realized that if I want to make sure that the music that I compose and produce will add maximum value to the game it was composed and it was driven by, I should also develop myself from the technical and the directional point of view.
Mm.
And that was the reason, I had this very specific decision back then that I was not going to only develop myself as a composer, but also how you get deep into the mechanics and the nature of the video games, how a game is being developed, what are the specific processes, different elements, and so on and so on. And going back to your question, I feel nice. I feel at home, and that's why I never pursued a career outside the game industry, even when I had a chance, to see some opportunities that were presented like 15 years ago in LA.
We'll get to that. But yeah, no, that's what I love. I really love that. While I never want anybody to feel hemmed in as though scoring a game now means you can't ever score a film, I also do appreciate when somebody really goes down deep. There are, like, for example, there are composers who are so fluent in filmmaking that they could probably direct a film themselves, and there's a few examples of that out there where they really integrate so much into that process that they really become the essence of what a so-called film composer might be, and the game equivalent to that, like you, I also just love. I find that so admirable and so interesting because a lot of composers, I think, really don't understand game design, and partly because it's a whole other profession. I mean, you spend your entire life trying to understand how games work, or how the ideal way to make one, or what the ideal player experience is, all that kind of thing. In the same way that we can spend our whole life dedicated to music, and at around age 90 go, I'm starting to get it. I'm starting to finally kind of wrap my head around it. A game designer really is no different in that regard, but there's something about the specialization I find not just endearing and interesting, especially as, from my point of view, as somebody who moves around a lot. But I really feel it in your works. You feel it when you play the games. It doesn't really feel like music that's just been kind of hammered on to a gameplay experience. Um, so I guess walk me through how was that an emergent approach, I guess is the right way to phrase it. Like where did you start to really kind of see this crystallize in your head about it's not just writing music. It is, like you said, I'm a game professional. I love that. It's like not even mentioning the music part. How did you formulate that idea for yourself? Because that's not usually something someone thinks of, as a kid and then just goes pursues that. That's an emergent thing. It's got to be.
Yeah, I believe that a very big part of the magic that is there, from my perspective, is that um, it's not only about good music or only about good games. I firmly believe that the music needs to be driven and inspired by the game itself in a very specific way. And I believe that the latest game of ours at Larian Studios, Baldur's Gate 3, is a really good example about it. Being involved from the very first day of its development to its completion gave me the chance to know each and every element from this game, from narrative point of view, from gameplay, combat mechanics, and everything, which gave me unique opportunities to realize what would be the best ways and approaches when it comes to not only composing but also using the music to the benefit of the game. You know what I mean? And a really good example would be one of the fans' favorite moment with the most charming and charismatic villain in the game. I don't know to give you any spoilers, but the very fact that I was closely involved and closely communicating with the narrative team, with the narrative lead, with the game designers, with Sven himself. As a result, we came with this idea to make something different, something brave, something interesting, and at the same time quite tempting. Uh, because we are not just marrying, we're not just connecting a good quality music with a good game.
Mm.
That's that. This is one of the secrets, if you like, the secret ingredients in our games, because everything is a synergy between the different elements. Everything is a result of a constant discussion, sharing of passion, energy, ideas, brainstorming, arguments, if you like, to the point that we realize those are really beautiful and brave ideas. Nothing has ever been done before like this. Is it crazy? Yes. Hell yes, let's go for it. And something like this would not be possible if I was not considering and if I was not developing myself as a game director and a game professional. Because being a really good composer is a challenge in its own right, goes without saying. But at the same time, early in my career, as I already mentioned, I realized that if I really would like to make sure that the music that I compose and produce is going to add the maximum value and impact for the game it was composed, I really need to dive to the bottom.
So you felt that very quickly, in other
Yeah, very
words.
early in my career, maybe partially because I was a bit disappointed from the very first results in the beginning of my career, because that it's more than anyone else. I believe that you know what I'm talking about when when I'm saying that when you see the music you composed and you invested all your heart and passion is not being used the way you imagined it to be
Mm.
in the first place, could be quite heartbreaking and underwhelming. And because this happened quite early in my career, many, many years ago, I didn't waste much time. And I said to myself, okay, I mean, if I'm going to do this for life, that's going to be my life. I'm going to, stay faithful to my passion, my heart. Let's do it properly. And that was the moment I said, okay, I'm ready to dive.
The takeaway from that is so important, especially if there's any. I meant to ask this actually, salient to that. I'm curious how many here are composers for whom a lot of this is theoretically directly applicable. Okay, I love that. I love that. I try to make these conversations feel not too insider to the composer's point of view, but it's always good to know that we can potentially get into some nitty gritty with an audience that's so overwhelmingly fellow travelers. Um, but yeah, for anyone that has had this experience where if you're more detached from the team and you're basically just sending in music and you're not really participating in the integration of it or the way that it's all being mixed together, who knows what can happen. And very rarely is there going to be an advocate for the music who understands its potential and how that dance should work. And it's not that every game should have music front and center all the time, and that's just the way it ought to be. It's a give and take. There's a lot of variables, and I've never really understood the mentality of just throw it over the fence and move on, because I think that you miss these opportunities, and or there's a lot of very heartbreaking moment. I had one to briefly give an example from my own story that's actually not from games, but I think it belies the same philosophy. I worked on a limited series for Netflix last summer that, well, came out last summer, worked on it for about a year and a half, about it's a 6-part sort of long form series, 6 hours, about the Thai Tom Luong cave and the soccer team of boys that got trapped in the cave. And they made this phenomenal dramatization of it for Netflix. And a lot of times composers don't go, or even overtly not invited to the final dub of these film and television productions. but I called the showrunner, and they were mixing in Toronto, and I said I'd really like to come to the mix, and he said, "Oh, we'd love to have you." So I flew up there, and had to pay my own tickets and all that. And I remember I walk into the dub stage, and they were on a break, and I look over at the Pro Tools session, and I see all the music stems, and there's a whole lot of gray, which means these are muted regions. And I thought, no, I'm glad I just got off a plane flying 6 hours to see my music. And it was all edited too. I could see it was like a bizarre, I could sort of instantly clock their process of change a bunch of stuff and then throw their hands up and mute it all. And so I said, "What's going on with that?" He said, "Oh, well, there's this sequence and it's just so exhausting and the music just never lets up." And we started to feel like it's just a lot to take in. And I watched the scene back with them, and now that it had all these sound effects in there that were not there when I was writing it, I realized, okay, yeah, you're not wrong, but let's figure it out together. And the showrunner goes, "Tell you what, I gotta take a phone call. I'll be back in an hour. Anything that you can get done in that hour, we will put in the show, no questions asked." So I jumped in with the sound designer, and we completely resculpted the scene. And most of the music made it back in, and it danced more effectively with the sound design. And it was one of those where I thought, imagine if I had never come. We killed myself over this cue, and it would have just been cut. And honestly, maybe righteously so. But because we were integrated deeper into the production, we were able to actually make something that everybody wins. And it's the same thing
It's
you're talking
absolutely the
about.
same thing, my friend. Yeah, and I think that the most successful examples would always be connected with a great collaboration between the composers and the team behind the production. And it goes without saying, because at the end of the day, if we do not enjoy the process of creation, if we are not happy with what we managed to achieve during our work together, we cannot expect that the people out there would be enjoying our work afterwards. Am I right? So it's as
For
simple
sure.
as that. And I can tell you another amusing story, by the way, from Baldur's Gate 3, which is going to be something I've never shared before. One of the most, again, fun favorite moments. There is a bard in the game called Elfira. It's a tiefling bard, and the player is supposed to help her finish her song, tribute song. Long story short, the song that I composed and produced for this particular moment in the game, which turned to be one of the fun favorites, happened completely by accident. It was not planned. It was a result of a very passionate collaboration between me and the writer, junior writer at that time. She came to me. She was very passionate about it. Her name is Rachel. And she said, "Bobby, I have this character, she's this and that and this and that." And she presented the character so passionately to me that I thought my first and genuine reaction was, "Oh, this must be a very important character that went off my radar." And I was like in a panic. Okay, I need to do something like this. It sounds like a very important character. And within 24 hours, I composed a brand new piece of music. And the very first version was performed by myself with my voice. I presented it to the team. Everybody loved it. Only to realize on the following day, talking with one of the game designers, that this was a really small character with just 10 lines of dialogue in the entire game. However, the game, the character was so famous within the early access of the game that we decided we're gonna give her way more, dialogue, and she's gonna take a bigger part in the entire game, to the point that I'm gonna stop here without giving any other spoilers. But it turned out to be a full-blown, secondary character in the game.
Yeah.
So this is a really
Perfect
this is another example of how the synergy, the passion, the communication between the team members could result in something so nice and unexpectedly beautiful at the end of the day. And I'm telling you, I still remember my conversation with one of the producers who was telling me, "Bobby, are you crazy? Are you really going to, to record this song with live orchestra?" And my answer was, "But I already did, my friend."
Here's the bill.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, and everybody loved it. Everybody, including, of course, most importantly, our director. And as a result, we had something that was not planned, but at the moment, it's considered one of the highlights in the game.
Well, this game in particular, and Divinity before it, are the kinds of games where there's just so much there. You could spend your whole life trying to find all these little hidden or not so hidden kind of secrets that they have. I mean, it boggles the mind how much is in those games and how much it's possible to just keep going back to. And I really would love to see the kind of spreadsheets that it took to even just plan the dialogue alone. It's absolutely insane. It's just the sheer volume of it is incredible. Well, tell you what, because I really just want to, I have so many other things I want to ask you about with Baldur's Gate particularly, but I know that we have some clips that kind of juxtapose. Well, why don't you set up the clips? And why don't we just take a look at those, because I think it's a wonderful way to kind of go deeper into it, because I could ask you all day long about Crisis and Divinity and all that, but I also want to make sure to leave time.
Okay, so I prepared 2 video clips for you guys today, which I wanted to use to give you a parallel between and to show you what was my vision 15 years ago and how did my vision evolve over the course of the past 15 years. So I prepared 2 video clips showing 2 of the video games I worked on, the first one being Crisis 2 and the second one being Baldur's Gate 3. And once we see those clips, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you some insights, and I'm going to share with you what was my vision back then, 15 years ago, what was my approach to composing and producing music for video games back then, and how it did evolve over the course of the last 10 to 15 years.
I love it. Can the powers that be make that happen?
The first one should be Crisis 2. Thank you.
Wait for it. Okay.
So I hope you noticed the very reason I captured this in-game video footage. This is actually real time. I mean that's footage from the game. Nothing. There was no scenario. You know, I played the game during I captured the video myself, and it was just a normal video gameplay footage from the game. The very reason I decided to show you this today, guys, it was just to show you the interactivity and the level of adaptiveness we managed to achieve back then, which was my focus 15 years ago. I really hope that you notice how the game was following and was adapting and reflecting every single decision of yours. Being a stealthy assassin in the shadows, or at some point if you decide to jump in the action, no matter what I was doing or you are doing in this game, it's going to instantly reflect, react, and adapt to your decision and actions. And the music we're talking about, of course, in particular, was designed, composed, and produced in a way that it reflects every single decision and action in the game. So the very reason I wanted to show you this video was that was my focus like 15 years ago, simply because video games are non-linear media. We all know this, and in comparison to the movies, we have absolutely no idea what's going to happen in the very next moment. I mean, specifically in action and role-playing games that I've been specializing the past 20 years. So 15 years ago, my main focus and my main effort and my approach and vision was based around making the music as adaptive, as reflective as possible. It was supposed to shape and to react to every single action in a game. So if you prefer to stay hidden in the shadows with a knife in your hand, fine, the music was going to support this decision of yours without breaking the immersion. If you would like to jump into action and to conquer and kill everyone out there, not a problem at all. The music would instantly, smoothly jump, transition, or modulate in the specific key or specific level of intensity in this case. So my work back then is what I'm trying to say is that heavily focused and heavily wrapped up about this vision and this approach.
It's amazing how well it ages too. I mean, this is not a new game. Yet there are so many games that come out, first-person shooters, that still today don't have that. You could feel it. I mean, it was one of those, I haven't thought about Crisis other than in the context of our friendship since the game basically came out. And
Yeah.
watching that, I was like, my God, it's so elegant that in a game, a lot of games struggle to achieve that now. It's astonishing. It's even just visually. I remember that game was the one that caused all the fury because no computer could handle it. It was the cyberpunk of its era. And I was like, as a result, though, you look at it and go, this really ages pretty well, considering the age.
Yeah, I believe so. And what I was saying is that I was very, very much focused on achieving this interactivity and adaptiveness. I was so much determined and so much focused on making this smooth flow. My goal back then, my energy was entirely focused on achieving a fluent experience from music perspective, where the music feels like it's being composed on the spot. It's being composed and presented to you on the spot to reflect your own decisions, your own actions. Going right, okay. Going left, okay. Jumping in the action. If you would like to retreat in the middle of the action, music would instantly reflect your decision and smoothly and elegantly reflect this action of yours and go to a stealth or just subtle tension to just show you that yes, the enemy is out there within a walking distance, but at the same time they haven't discovered your presence yet. So I believe I managed to achieve this.
Did the team, obviously yes, did the team need any convincing? Because this is very hard to do without the team's full buy-in and support, because this often involves the gameplay programmers and people who can connect these systems to however the music is being managed, and sometimes they're more available for that than other times.
That's a really beautiful question, my friend. And it's directly connected with the previous topic that we were talking about. I was not only the lead composer of Crisis 2 franchise, along with Tilman Silescu, my dear fellow composer, and Hans Zimmer.
Yeah, I was going to say you got to tell us your great Uncle Hans story.
Uncle Hans, yeah. But I had a pleasure also, not only the pleasure, but rather the luck and the opportunity to also direct the music production, which gave me the chance to design the music system and to supervise their implementation, which basically was the essence and the final and the most important thing. Because as I'm used to saying to my students, even the best soundtrack out there might not add a good quality to a game if it's not well implemented. And the other way around.
Preach.
You might not have the best soundtrack out there, recorded with live orchestra and everything, but at the same time, if it's very elegantly and professionally and adequately implemented, it's gonna achieve this synergy and add value to the end product, which is something critically important in the video games, in movies, of course, as well. But what I was saying is that back then, the adaptiveness and the interactivity in the video game music was something that I was totally devoted to, very committed and very focused on. Over the course of the 15 years, I slowly started to realize that that's not enough. That, it's really not, we're talking about video games after all, right? It's the biggest challenge between video games and movies is that the games are not linear media. All those different decisions, actions that we cannot predict. That's a really huge challenge. I know how many of you guys are video game composers or have the passion to develop themselves in this direction. But I can tell you that if you decide to go down this route, that's the very first and the biggest challenge you need to face. How to compose the music in a way that afterwards it can be implemented very elegantly in any given direction, depending on any given decision or action in the game. Anyway, I was very happy with the result, only to find out right after I achieved this result that that's not enough. That was, a necessary condition for a music to be successful. But I was personally not fully satisfied because, again, one beautiful morning, I came to realize that after all, we are talking about music. It's not just, elevator music or background noise of some sort. I realized that I was not happy fully with the way the music was provoking and supporting the narrative, the emotions. It was not driving the emotions on the next level, if you like. It was a really strong and well-produced and composed music, at least from my perspective. But at the same time, I felt that something was not there. And that was the moment I slowly started to change my vision about producing music for video games. And as a result, I did my best to get even more connected with the development team right from the start, with the director, right from the moment the game idea was conceived. What is all about, what we want to achieve, what are the twists, what are, all the little details, what is the agency we would like to achieve, because one of the things that we are very famous at Larian Studios is that we would like to give you all the freedom in the world. That's basically one of the pillars in the game development for us. Speaking about all these details, I came to realize that it's not only about interactivity. It's not only about the music being adaptive, following your actions, decisions, adaptively morphing from one key to another, from action to stealth and vice versa. But I wanted to go deeper and to become part of the driving force. Because up until that point in my career, I was doing my best to stay faithful to being the music production to be driven entirely by the game itself.
Right.
At that point, I said that the next level would be if the music itself, in some very specific moments, of course, becomes the driving force itself.
Well, preaching to the choir on that one. As somebody who just released a musical.
And that was one of the reasons I felt so much at home when I joined the Larian Studios team. Because it's a unique place where, each and every one's voice is heard. Everyone can share their idea, their opinion, can start a discussion, which usually ends with something very charged with so much passion and emotion. And that is, for me, one of the reasons we enjoy so much the process of creation. I mean, I'm talking about my fellow colleagues at Larian Studios. And when I found myself in such a fruitful and such a friendly environment, I realized that it was the right time for me to start going crazy with my ideas and to put my vision on the next level with the Divinity and our latest game, Baldur's Gate 3. And here comes the moment I would like to play for you the second clip, which is one of the examples I'm very proud of something like this, something brave, something unexpected.
Is this the Raphael?
It's the Raphael stuff.
Okay, great, because that's definitely one of the things I wanted to ask you. Very few times have I ever been so struck while playing a game by a choice that just is courageous. I mean, it's just one of those where...
Courageous is the right word to put it in.
People could easily have hated this.
Exactly.
I mean, it was really... How many of you have played Baldur's Gate 3 and know what we're talking about already? Okay, so this is slightly spoilery, but... Can we let's play the clip? Did you want to be able to say anything while we?
I would rather say something in advance so that it makes a little bit more sense when you're watching the video. But we're talking about one of the most, if not the most charismatic and charming villain in the game, without giving any other details. I mean, think about Hans Landa from Inglourious Basterds. It's basically the closest thing that comes to my mind. It's it's the villain, it's the bad guy. All right, but at the same time, the narrative, the dialogues, and the way the character was developed and all the dialogues written, it turned out to be one of my most favorite characters and extremely charismatic villain, I would say. And at the end of the day, you wonder, should I hate him or should I love him? And the moment that I was talking about, the courageous moment Austin is talking about, is the end, the climax, the end of the narrative, the narrative arc of this villain. The moment you jump into a fight with this character, life to death. And that was the moment where, as a result of this harmony in the Larian Studios team, we decided to do something very courageous, something totally out of the box, unexpected, taking a huge risk, which is totally unexpected and unusual. It's a boss fight. It's a huge combat encounter with one of the biggest villains in the game.
It's also freaking hard.
It's a freaking hard.
So like you're going to end up playing it a lot. And
and that was the moment our director Sven Vinke, along with the narrative team, came with absolutely amazing idea to give the boss its own song, full-blown song with lyrics and all. when I heard about the idea, I was so excited that I decided now would be the time to become even more even crazier. So I thought, not just a song, let's make it a full-blown musical number, which was some completely unexpected. Nobody would ever expect something like this in a role-playing game like ours. So as you said, it was very brave and very unexpected things to do. But as a result, again, of this absolutely unique environment where the creativeness is the most important thing. If you are being passionate, if you are being creative, if you would like to achieve something that is truly charged with emotion and with passion, you'd be given all the freedom in the world to express yourself and to achieve it. You can go for it. And that was exactly the case. Nobody knew. I remember that was going to be something, hate it or love it situation. But
was there anyone internally that was not convinced? I know it's a very open team and people speak up their opinions. Was there anybody that was like, are you sure this is the right thing to do?
Oh, well, at some point, I was not entirely sure that it was really the best idea there. But the very fact that I love so much, composing, producing songs in the first place, and because that was, I believe, one of the main reasons my boss and our director decided to give a green light to this song, gave me the courage and gave me, the confidence that I should go for it and be fully crazy. And this is what I did. Instead of, safe song, something that would be universally a safe bet.
Right.
Let's go crazy. Let's go wild. And we came up with this, as I said, full-blown musical style number.
Do you want to be able to speak while it plays?
I don't have to this time around because it's a shorter clip and it just shows basically the transition between the last dialogue that you have with Raphael, the character in the game, and the beginning of the combat itself.
All right, let's do it. Short clip indeed.
Yeah, it was a short clip because I didn't want to spoil the entire song in case someone...
Oh, yeah, it goes. It's not just that. For for anyone seeing this for the first time, it's a full-on thing. It's not just like an intro and then back to business as usual.
Yeah. Hopefully you had a chance to experience yourself, guys. And if you do, please drop me a message.
Yeah, it was. I'm so glad you at least gave us a taste because it was definitely one of those where this game does not. The game takes itself seriously. It invites you to be fully immersed, and like you said, Larian's whole thing is letting the player truly role play in the essence of like a proper. I mean, this is obviously a D&D, legitimate D&D like IP, but the idea that there's a self-expression that's baked into this kind of game. And it's such a classic thing with this one and with Divinity Original Sin, where everyone who plays it at one point goes, I want to try this plus that plus this, and surely that's not going to do something. And then it does. And it's like this game changer. We go, oh, I can't believe Darren Korb, if any of you are familiar, excellent composer, music of Hades and Transistor and Bastion. He and I had probably a 2-hour conversation a month ago comparing which characters we've chosen, what kind of play style we have, and we both had the same story of, at some point I tried this, didn't think it was going to go anywhere, and it fully changed how I was approaching the. I mean, we just were nerding out endlessly about that. And so what I love is that because it takes itself so seriously and engages the player to do that, that makes a choice like this all the more courageous, because you're basically saying, now we're going to show you something. It's not just about your self-expression, but we're actually going to present something that is not of your making. And that in the context, never mind the broader context of just games in general, not really doing a thing like that. And in an otherwise serious context, it's one thing. Tim Schafer might do that in a Double Fine game, and it's sort of expected because they're all comedies. This is like, no. You're fighting the devil.
The devil, yeah.
It's
Basically,
amazing.
that was the most important detail is that Raphael is the devil himself, and that's why it was so courageous and so unexpected for a game like this one, which is a very deep, very serious, and very dark game, I can tell you. And all of a sudden, the devil himself is coming on stage to perform his own song, which features lines from the very first conversation with you from the start of the game. And what you're saying, my friend Hems, makes me very, very, very happy sharing all those details that whatever you decide to try in our games has a very surprising result at the end of the day. And you know why? Because this is it. We are not making difference between main and secondary quests, main dialogues and secondary dialogues, because the real freedom when it comes to a deep role-playing game like this one is about having all the freedom in the world to make you feel that you are writing your own story. And that's why, going back to what I was going to say, my approach about composing and producing music evolved in this direction when I started to base the music productions and be able to be implemented in a systemic way. What does that mean? This means that if you, for instance, decide to make something horrible or good in this world on a global level, the music would reflect it. If you make a good choice, it's going to make a permanent difference in the game. If you help entire village lift a curse, the music colors will shift from dark to light and the other way around. You can entirely skip this encounter with Raphael and it's totally fine because that was part of somebody else's story, but you might encounter a different one right behind the corner. So it's all about agency, all about freedom, all about making you feel special and important, not in a very scripted way, but in a very organic, systemic way is the word I was looking for. I hope that you understand what I mean when I say systemic. We strive to make systems which react in a very organic way, and depending on the actions, decisions, and whatever you do in the game, everything that you do has a very meaningful impact on the games, and including the music when I go back to the topic. So this is how my vision and my approach to composing and producing the music for video games changed over the course of the past 15 years, from being totally focused on producing interactive and adaptive score to designing and implementing music systems which could make a meaningful change depending on your story in the game.
I think that distinction is really important because there's a lot of interactive systems. I've been shown things before. A composer will spend a lot of time working on something and it might look a little bit more like the Crisis clip you showed, except it's one of those where it starts to get so granular that it just ends up feeling kind of like a wall of static. It's very difficult to feel the changes that are happening. They're happening on such a microscopic level and it doesn't really add up to any kind of storytelling level on a level that we can parse.
That's a very good point, and let me interrupt you. I'm sorry for this, but that would be the right
show.
time to let you know that, that's actually the most important thing that I wanted to share with you guys. That ultimately, I realized that no matter what we do as composers, ultimately we need to stay faithful to the music that we compose. 15 years ago, I would say something different. My narrative would be, you know what, guys, this is a different media. It's a linear media. There are specific rules that you need to follow. The music needs to be very adaptive, interactive, and blah, 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 which is all true, of course. But 15 years later, from, the perspective of being a bit older and hopefully less stupid, I now my narrative changed a little bit different. And today I firmly believe that no matter what we do, what you do, guys, stay faithful to your music, to your art, because if you stay faithful and you produce music with your heart, then your audience will be happy. We cannot expect as composers that the music we produce is going to be well accepted and loved if we don't love it during the process of composition and production. And don't fall in the trap of being too much focused and too much invested into the technical stuff of the music is what I'm trying to say. That's the bottom line of it, my friend. And this is the biggest difference between 15 years back in time and today. So yeah, I still compose and design and implement interactive music systems, but ultimately I never let it go off my radar when it comes to the music itself.
There's so much more I would love. It's a shame that this isn't a 4-hour thing because there's so many things that I keep going. I'll just have to leave that one for another time. I think we're very close to out of time here, but I know that there's a little throwable microphone that they showed me in case there's anyone. Yeah, is there anyone who wants to ask some questions just so that we don't overly that I don't overly steal the thing? So right behind you, catch our little non-dangerous throwable microphone.
It's very soft, actually. Oh, it's not.
It's not on though.
Maybe
No.
you should press it.
Yeah, you have to let it
No.
hover above you and jump up and smack it.
Down, down, down.
Hold on, the powers that be are seeing to it.
Yes.
Ah,
Oh, I
here
hear
we go.
myself now. Oh,
Oh,
wow.
you need to lick it.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
I didn't for the one who was after me. I have one thing I just want to say and one question. And the thing I want to say is that I'm just completely in awe with everything that Baldur's Gate is and that the music is a huge part of it. And the Tiefling Bard part you mentioned was, it just completely blew my mind because it was like on a little cove somewhere else, little path. And also as like for at that time stuck composer myself, it was kind of, I don't know, it's all linked. So thank you. And with the Raphael fight, I haven't reached it yet, but it just makes complete sense with the interactions that I've had. And I think it's just brilliant and I can't wait for it. Then my question, you were talking about the interactivity of the music and how it develops. And when you do make a good choice, it becomes lighter. And when you make like a generally bad choice, it becomes darker. How do you approach this when in Act 3 it all becomes a bit more morally ambiguous, that is how I experienced it for myself so far. Like every choice I make, it's like choosing between 3 different evils, and I have to kind of decide which one I find the least unacceptable in a way. But just wondering how you approach the, well, morally ambiguous nature of the narrative into the music as well.
First of all, thank you so much for your kind words. I'm very happy that the players agency that we've been talking about all day is something that you enjoyed so much. Giving as an example the Bard. And going back to your question, how you try to answer it without giving too much spoilers, because Act 3 is a very specific and very legendary place in the series. And what I can tell you is that I had quite a bit of a challenge there when I was approaching the music, simply because at some point, what you're talking about, this ambiguity and this, dark colors, they are not visible right from the start. Because by nature, this is a beautiful, sunny city. And without spoiling anything, I had to be very careful how to approach the music. So basically, let's just say it that when you progress with the story, from a point on, depending on your actions, the music changes and you are going deeper to darker and darker places, which are reflecting your choices, especially if you go down the dark urge path.
I'm intending to do that for my like 3rd playthrough or so.
Yeah, so I'm struggling to answer your question without giving any spoilers, but let's say that one thing that I can tell you without spoiling your experience and surprises as well there is that I was very happy with my decision to go very minimalistic with the music for the city. For instance, almost the entire soundscape in the city is based on acoustic instruments, woodwinds, very sparse, very subtle, very minimalistic. But I was very happy with what we managed to achieve simply because it nicely complements the environment and the life environment, the chatter, the city itself. And last but not least, lays the foundation of a very nice contrast for what's going to happen afterwards.
Can I email you when I finished it?
And let me just stop here so that I don't spoil your surprises.
Anyone else before we get kicked out of here? Here, right next to you, it looks like.
No problem. You were talking about reaching out to game studios and reaching out to the composer and stuff. How would you go about doing that in like not pushy way?
Be friendly as a start. No, that's a really good question, and my advice for young composers would be try to connect with in development teams, small independent teams, because those are the people that can help you to learn the craft, to give you an interest in the industry, so that you can make a start, build a track record of your own. I know that it might sound a little bit discouraging, but it's really hard to jump directly up there, because it takes time. Not only even it just takes time for you to develop. You are not prepared. It takes time. It took for me. It took like more than 7 years before I managed to to be honest with myself and say, okay, you know how it works now, and I believe that you are prepared now to do something really more complicated, bigger, and more sophisticated. But my advice for you would be get in touch with all those beautiful small independent teams that are full of passion, full of energy, ready to conquer the world, and offer them their heart, your heart, your passion, and if the luck is there, one of those independent teams might be the next big studio.
I would also just add that when messaging somebody, whether it's a composer or a game developer, of course, if it's an independent team that hasn't made anything yet, this doesn't necessarily fully apply. But if it's somebody that you already admire and respect, the more that it's clear that you're not just sending a blank email. We spoke about this a little bit at the beginning, where it's just a form letter or a template or something. Make it feel like you really, part of it might just sound like I'm asking you to sort of placate their ego a little bit. And maybe honestly, that's a little bit part of it. But if it feels like, if someone's on the receiving end of an email that says, oh, this person's really actually paid attention to my work and it seems to matter to them, you're already so far ahead of 99% of the emails that feel more generic and plain, and because it means a lot. We make work hoping to share it. The goal is to put something out in the world that actually connects with people. And if it feels like someone connected to the point that they want to actually send a note, and they don't just want to send a note, but they're thinking it would be wonderful to find a way to collaborate someday, you can't deny the feeling that one gets reading a thing like that, and it makes them far more likely to apply. The only thing to respond, and the only thing that I would add to that is, think of it from the headspace of you reaching out to see how you can serve them and not what they can do for you. Exactly. We get a lot of emails that are like, hey, I need a job, so what are we going to do about that? And you think, well, good luck. I don't know what to tell you. What are you looking for? That's like they're asking. It's like they want me to do something, and versus somebody who, and sometimes the language difference can be very subtle between it feeling like one versus the other, of someone showing up to say, how can I help you with what you do in the world? What is, my agent has this expression of you should be the solution to the problem they don't know they have yet. And I always loved that, this idea that you're going out to find ways to help other people. It's not you're looking for people that are going to be a stepping stone for you to achieve your dreams. You know what I mean?
That's very well to put it in, because ultimately what I would add to what you're saying, my friend, is that that's the best way to learn the job. If you offer to help somebody else, don't be selfish. It goes without saying, from my perspective, if you are really willing and are passionate to learn, that's a really good way. Instead of asking, okay, please, I would like to help you composing this and that, it's not going to work this way. But if you are honest, fully honest, it shows, by the way. It doesn't really matter how good you are in, you don't have to be a sweet talker. You don't have to be, a professional guy who, appeals to a man's ego. But if you are genuine and you are genuinely offering help to some of our fellow composers, they might see the potential and the value, and they might get you in the studio as an assistant, as a student, or anything, and that would be a unique opportunity, because that's really priceless. That's really priceless, because during this process of offering your service, your help to those guys, because they are very busy. Sometimes we are very busy. We don't have time for so many things. And if we can put our trust on your shoulder, that's the best thing that you can achieve, because in return, we're going to teach you so many things that otherwise would take you years to learn. If I'm to go back in time, this is exactly what I would do, my friend. Because I had to learn it the hard way.
Do we have time for another one or two of these? I assume we okay? Okay, good. I'm just waiting to whoever. I see your hand. That's the only hand I see. So okay. All right, we'll have to throw it. It'll be a test of your athleticism here.
So I write music as like a hobby, so I don't take it very seriously. But recently I've been struggling with lack of inspiration and like writer's block. Do you have any advice on how to get back to writing and have new ideas? Because I've been doing it like pretty intensively, you could say, for 1.5 years now, but nothing really comes out anymore.
That's a very good question, because obviously it's not something that we can force. You wake up early in the morning, and if you don't feel that the inspiration is there, and you should not force yourself unless you have a really hard deadline, and that's really a problem. I can tell you what I do. I don't know if it's going to help for everyone else, but if I live in the skirts of the mountain, back in my home of Sofia. And in a case like this one, I get my Labrador. I have a dog, back Labrador, which I'm used to calling my beloved bitch. So I take my bitch and I go for a long walk in the mountains, which is very inspiring for me, especially when it comes to composing music for fantasy game. Or if you are composing music for a sci-fi project, why not watching a movie that would give you a spark? Then read again the script and talk with someone else from the team. This is what always helps me and always brings me back. At the end of the day, you need to develop your own recipe, I guess. But this is what I do usually.
Thank you.
I would offer two things. I can't really top that, but just two that I might add that are in a way almost contradictory to each other. For me, writing is in the rewriting a lot of the time. So I will just write something that I already know I hate, but it's a lot easier to then look at that and go, okay, well, what isn't working about this? Okay, it's too slow, or there's too much happening. I need to simplify this or whatever. And it's a lot easier to react to something that's there than to sit there and go, I refuse to write something until I know it's going to come out perfectly, because then you're going to sit there not moving for eternity. I much rather to kind of vomit up something terrible and then start shuffling the parts around. That can help a lot, I think. And then the other thing, which I think this romantic image of walking in the mountains and all this is a perfect demonstration of, is that I find that composers sometimes, whether hobbyist or professional, can get so fixated on music, they forget that music is just part of the overall kind of landscape of life. And we forget to be people. And so I find that, I'll go read a book about science or history, or I'll go to a museum, or I love to scuba dive, for example. And the more that I kind of step away from the music fundamentally, it's not just go to a concert. I go to concerts 1,000 times a year, and that can be very inspiring as well, especially really, like I just got back a couple weeks ago from six metal bands over 3 days out in the desert. Like, I love variety, but sometimes you have to step wildly outside, and just let the world kind of talk to you, and then it'll spark something that's you can't force. To Bobby's point, you can't. I was reading a book once of Stephen Hawking's, and it started giving me ideas that were not really related to the book, but I don't know that I would have had any other way for that to appear otherwise. So it's always my, don't just step away from the page and, step 5 feet from the page, but like go miles away from the page periodically, and just don't forget to live a life and hopefully be an interesting person.
Ultimately, it really needs to work for you. So just explore and find it out.
Yeah. One more here, shall we? Well, yeah, you said up in the rafters here. How wonderfully warm and wholesome is this man next to me, right? He's just. Don't you just want to be his best friend forever?
Funny enough, the question before me was exactly the same as I was gonna ask. So who wants? I can throw a good ball.
There is a lady
Yes,
here.
up in the front. Let's go.
She's trying for quite some time. Woo!
Well aimed.
Yeah.
Which usually means that physically throwing it would not be very assumed.
Me too, but 400 hours on Baldur's Gate doesn't match. Yeah, so 400 hours on Baldur's Gate, I've been listening to your art, and that's not even counting the hours I also listened to it on Spotify during work. Thank you, it's amazing.
Thank you so much.
But I actually wanted to ask that you mentioned with Crisis 2, your goal was to achieve maximum reactivity, and then with Baldur's Gate 3, your goal was to have music also be a driving force in the story. What is your next goal?
Well, if I tell you my next goal, I need to close the doors and keep you here forever. No, seriously, a lot of ideas. Nothing is set in stone yet, but the only thing that I can tell you that we are starting to cooking something new and very exciting. And before I say goodbye, I would like to tell you guys that I would be very happy if you get in touch with me, and I believe same applies for Austin. Even though our time is up now, I would be very happy to get connected with you, so you can easily find me, find us in the social medias. I'm easily, discoverable on Facebook, Twitter. So if you have any questions, if there is anything that we can help you, give you advice, give an opinion, share a thought, or just say hi, it's gonna be very heartwarming for us. So just let's not stop here, is what I'm trying to say. Thank you so much.
Well said. And don't forget to come to the concert and hear this man's fabulous music.
Thank you, guys.